Welcome, everybody. As I was just saying, this is the House Hunting Top Tips webinar, which will hopefully clarify and demystify some of the decisions that you have to make and things that you have to consider when you go about house hunting this year. So my name is Lynn Wilson. I'm a Housing Hub Advisor here at Unipol Student Homes. Unipol is a student housing charity which works in conjunction with the universities in Leeds, and we've been here helping students since 1973. We are a not-for-profit organisation, so any money that any revenue that we make, which comes in through our rents, through our student properties, gets put back into those student properties to give students a good accommodation experience. We have the largest housing website in Leeds with student properties. So um, we've got a lot of people here who have got a lot of experience and are in a position to offer advice to students. So what's it all about? It may be that you're in your first year, you may be in a second year or beyond in Leeds, but house hunting, you may have heard, for a property next academic year starts on the 19th of October. Now, what this means is any property that is going to be available for next year for you to live in will be advertised from the 19th of October, but there is absolutely no need to rush. We don't want students to feel that they have to panic, they have to suddenly find housemates to live with, and they have to sign for something straight away. It's just that those properties are going to be available from that time, and properties will continue to be available, for months to come. So there's no need to rush. But if you're in the fortunate position where you know exactly who you want to live with and you know where you want to live, then you can start your viewings and you can make that living decision in the next couple of weeks, and you can then forget about it until you move in next summer. Some students prefer to do that. And if you are doing that in October and you're doing that a bit earlier, we want to make sure that you've got all of the right information so that you make a decision that's a good one and is right for you. So we're just going to go through some top tips and, give you some advice how to avoid some pitfalls. We want you to ask questions. So if there are any questions which emerge as I go through, please do raise them and I'll get to them. I'll probably get to them towards the end. And if you do stay with us until the end and you complete a short survey, you could be entered into our competition to win a prize of £200 in cash. So please do stay with us for the whole webinar. So we want you to know that support is available through Unipol. We're centrally located on Woodhouse Lane between the city campus of Leeds Beckett University and the University of Leeds. If you're familiar with Broadcasting Place, that tall rusty coloured building on Woodhouse Lane, we're immediately opposite that. So we're open from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, for you to come in person. Our phone lines are open. We also have a web chat facility where you can talk to us, live online. And we're here to answer your questions. As it says here in our housing guide, everything is under one roof. So you can come and search for houses with us. You can find out about trustworthy landlords, and you can access a free advice service. Please ask us questions throughout, as I was saying before. So one thing we'd like you to take away today is something which is called the Unipol Code. And the Unipol Code is it's an accreditation scheme, which is a set of standards which will let you know that you're getting a fair deal from a good landlord. And how would you know something was part of the Unipol Code and included in it? How would you know it had that kind of quality mark? And it would be that green thumbs up symbol. And you will see that on agents' websites, on advert web pages, and here at Unipol, you'll see that green thumbs up sign to tell you which properties and which landlords are credited by the Unipol Code. So the Unipol code itself, it's a scheme which ultimately seeks to raise standards in student housing. Landlords voluntarily join the code and they're expected to provide a service that goes beyond what is required by law. We don't just want landlords in Leeds providing you what they have to, the absolute minimum. We want them to go beyond what is required to give you good customer service, safer physical conditions, and they must, as part of that code, adhere to a reasonable set of repair timescales. So you can have a look at the code as well so that you know what your landlord is obligated to do as part of that. So in order to check the code and to see what our landlords are doing and what the property conditions are like, Unipol inspect a percentage of the landlord's properties on a 3-year cycle. So we'll randomly select a number of properties, we'll go and check them quite rigorously. Um, and then we'll report back to a landlord if there are things which fall short of the code to make sure that they do meet the requirements of the code. Or it might be that a student complains about a particular property that they're living in. And if that's the case, we will go out and inspect that property and we will liaise with the student and the landlord to get a resolution. So again, here are the thumbs up symbols. We have different versions of the Unipol code depending on the type of landlord, property owner somebody is, but they are all depicted by that green thumbs up symbol. So you look out for that and it would be a really good safety net for you. So, just a little word about managing agents. Many of you, when you go about your house hunting searches, you're probably going to go to some of the larger letting agents in Leeds, and you'll see a number of properties on their websites. They'll take you to those properties. You may even sign your contracts with them. But just check whether they're offering a full service or whether it is just a let only service that they're offering. Many managing agents will show you a property on a website. They'll take you to view that property, undertake the signing process. But once you've signed, it might be that you deal with the landlord directly about all of your repairs and anything that comes up while you're living there. It might be a third party maintenance company, or it could be somebody else. So it's just really important that you know when you sign your contract, who is it going to be that you will be dealing with while you're living in the tenancy, because that will make a big difference to you. And lots of landlords independently will manage their properties very well indeed. There are some managing maintenance companies that will as well, but it's we wouldn't want you to meet a particular agent, have them show you around, and for you to think that that's who your relationship would continue with during the tenancy, if actually the your encounter with them would stop at that point. Always read your contract carefully or get somebody to look at it with you, so that you understand what you're agreeing to. They could be quite long documents, a lot of detail in there, and particularly if you are an international student, do get some advice on that as well. It could be hard for a home UK student, but I'm sure it would be even more complicated for an international student, so that there is help at hand, and I'll talk about that in a little while. If you do find a property or you do find a landlord and you think that you might sign up with them, you can go to the Unipol website to check whether the property or the landlord are covered by the Unipol code. We have some lookup sections where you can search this out and it will give you a result to tell you whether they are or are not part of the code. We also have a really useful website in Leeds which is called Rate Your Landlord. Now, this is a website which is used exclusively by students. We receive over 1,000 new reviews each year. The reviews which are on that website stay on that website for 3 years. And at any one time, we'll have over 2,000 live reviews. So it's a really rich source of getting real information about what somebody's experience was like living in a particular property or living with a particular landlord. and you will find all kinds of reviews. You will find some really great reviews with landlords who, students will describe as being like, um, a home away from home, being like a second mother, to some really bad reviews as well, where people would say, I would never ever stay with this landlord again. So again, if you find a landlord or if you find a property, go on to that website, rate your landlord. You can search by property or landlord and see if if anybody's left a review for them. The other thing which is on that website, which I think is really useful, is you can look at some of the rankings, because we have awards every year for the best landlords in Leeds, and you can see the rankings, so the top 10 best landlords. So if you look at those landlords and you find the ones that have, won awards year on year, you could contact them and see if they've got any properties going, and you could arrange some viewings with them directly that way. So when it comes to house hunting, there's a lot involved. So what we wanted to do was show you a little bit about some of the properties that you might come across if you look with Unipol. Um, One of the features of Unipol is that we are here to help you with your housing searches. We're here to offer advice, but we do have a large property portfolio ourselves. So it may well be that you come and look at properties with Unipol and that we ourselves become your landlord because you sign with us. So we're just going to talk to you a bit about that. You may well, when you start off looking at properties, want to think about where you want to be. Some people can be quite flexible and, they just want to find the right house and they don't really mind where it is. For some people, location is really, really important. And for example, I know a lot of students who come to talk to us say that they want to be within walking distance of the university. And by walking distance, they'll often mean about a 15-minute walk. So if that's the case, you probably would want to hone your searches down to areas around the university, Woodhouse, Little Woodhouse, and some of the upper areas of Hyde Park, in order to be in that radius. So, and when you do your searches, which I'll come on to later, you can narrow that down. You can apply certain filters so that you only see available properties in those areas. Just a word to mention the transport links in Leeds. We do have really good bus services. So on these red roads, which are going out from the university up towards Headingley, the main Woodhouse Lane A660, that is a very busy, it's one of the busiest bus corridors in Europe. So there are buses going up there every few minutes. So if you live somewhere near that red road, you're going to be assured to be able to get in on the bus. And equally, if you were going out towards Kirkstall, there are lots of buses which go from the Headrow, and beyond. So if you don't mind a short bus journey, it might be worth you casting your net a bit wider and looking at some of those other areas too. So properties that you'll see on our website when the houses are launched, some of them are ours and some of them belong to other landlords, but it could be anything from a self-contained studio to very small houses with up from 2 beds up to 18 bedrooms, all across all of the popular locations. So we really do have something to suit everybody. There's modern apartment living, and then there are rooms in purpose-built students' accommodation. So I'll just take you through some examples of some Unipol-owned properties so that you can see the kind of standard you'd be living in if you lived with Unipol. So this is a typical example of one of our houses, which would be shared maybe between 4 people. So you've got a galley, modern galley type kitchen there. Um, all of our properties have got washing machines as well included, so you don't have to worry about going to the laundrette. And they typically are washer dryers. This is a larger property. I think this is one for 7 students, but you can see that nice like open plan kitchen area and plenty of living space as well for everybody to sit together. In that property as well, you'll notice that we have 2 large fridge freezers so that everybody has enough space for their food. This is an example of a bedroom with that one looks like a double bed. Many of our properties have three-quarter beds in them. Some of if a bedroom in a house is a very small bedroom, typically that probably would have a single bed. But our rents are quite flexible or dynamic in that uh, a smaller rent charge would usually be made for a lower rent charge would be made for a smaller bedroom. So it might be that if you took a small room in a house, you would pay a little bit less in rent to compensate for that. There's an example at the bottom right there of a house in Headingley. So a big driveway there at the front, and that will have a bit of a garden at the back. Again, another nice modern kitchen, modern bathroom, attic room there, nicely carpeted and nicely decorated. The bedrooms that we offer will all have, and this is part of the code as well, you would have a bed, a desk, some drawers, and a wardrobe at least, and a study chair. So that's something that you could expect as an absolute minimum. There's another example there of some properties that we've got with the big communal kitchens. And yes, so you can see there in those bedrooms, they've all got storage space as well as the beds too. And some more, just to give you an idea. Um, there are some really fabulous properties out there, so hopefully you'll be able to find one of them for yourself and your friends. So when it comes to house hunting and house hunting is launched, the first thing you're going to need to do is make a short list. Um, from speaking with students, we find the most effective thing to do is to, look through a lot of properties, maybe have some criteria to hand. So it might be the area, it might be the number of bedrooms, it might be whether you want a garden or how many bathrooms the property needs to have. But so when you've kind of whittled it down to what you really are looking for, try and maybe find a top three or a top four. And from that, you could then try to view those properties. I've seen many groups of students over the years, and they can take a long time to choose their property, and miss out on others in the meantime. It's really important that you do know exactly the size of your group. It's going to be no good coming to see ourselves or any landlord or letting agent if you're not exactly sure of the size of your group. So because there's no point going to view maybe houses for four or five or six people thinking that, oh well, you'll just get the extra people, you'll just find the extra people, because sometimes that can take a little bit of time, by which time the house that you might have really liked has been booked by somebody else. So be really definite in the size of your group and who you're looking with. uh, Find the houses that you like the look of and try to book viewings for them, and then you could compare between those ones, and you're not going to be overwhelmed with all the choice. If you look at too many, it does become overwhelming, and it becomes quite difficult to all agree as well, especially if you are a large group. But what you'll find on most adverts is a pre-recorded walkthrough. So there's likely to be a YouTube video on each of our adverts, which will walk you through the property. Some landlords will offer you like live streaming or 360-degree virtual tours on the larger buildings. So you could do quite a lot of the work beforehand. Um, I've experienced students who've been on lots of viewings and have come back and said, "Oh no, I'm not signing for that." And when I've inquired as to why, they've said, "Oh, that room was too small." Well, if they kind of put the work in beforehand and had a look at the room on the video, they would have seen the sizes, because it is all there for you to see. So do put in that extra work, because that will save you time in the long run as well. And then when it comes to a physical viewing, um, ideally your whole group will be there so that you can all make a decision together. But invariably, some people have timetables which just don't fit into other people's schedules. Some people might be on a placement or away. So what you can do is you can either a group of you, a selected group of you can go and view the property, and then you can film it yourself, or you can do a live show round, on WhatsApp or something like that to one of your friends. And we find that that tends to work quite well. I always say to students, try to look beyond what you currently see. The tenants who are living there won't be living there when you move in. So it's going to be a blank canvas. So the furnishings might be there and the carpets might be there and the kitchen fittings might be there. But if, try to look beyond the way people have either, got furniture arranged or if there's any mess, because, we will go in, we will clean those properties before you move into them. So I think it's, really important to, look at the space, think about does it feel like a secure property? If you're viewing something on a cold day, does it feel like it's warm or is it drafty? Do things work? How does the heating work? What is the shower like? Uh, don't feel awkward about turning the taps on to see what how the shower works, because if it's not very good, you might not want to live there. So, it's your viewing to get as much out of it as you can. If the current tenants are home as well, it's a really good idea to ask them what their experience has been of living in the property. They'll always be really honest. So if the landlord's been great, they'll tell you, and if they haven't, they'll also tell you that too. So if you see a current tenant, in downstairs or wherever in the house, do try to ask them. If you get one of our housing guides from our website, and I can drop the link off to you, you will also see within it is a property checklist. Now, this checklist is really useful because if you are going out for viewings with your friends, it could be quite exciting and it could be quite easy to forget some of the duller aspects of living in a property. So this checklist will just help you to kind of focus your minds on things like how many plug sockets are there in the bedroom? What else is there? Are the external doors solid? Um, does the property have double glazing? All these things that are going to be more comfortable if you're living in the property, help to make the property more comfortable. So it would be really easy to just look around a property quickly and not remember all of this. So the guide is there to help you. So I really strongly would recommend you take a copy with you or have a copy on your phone to refer to when you're viewing. We also have a deposit guide as well. That's available from our website, and that will tell you everything you would need to know about deposits. Why you have to pay them, how they're protected, and importantly, how you get them back. So I'm going to talk a bit about some money matters, because there are all kinds of financial implications. It's not just the rent that you have to think about when you're moving into a property, and I'll go through some of these now. So administration charges, for example, you shouldn't have a landlord tell you that they need £50 or X number of pounds for admin fees. Um, 5 or 6 years ago, well, 5 years ago in 2019, the Tenant Fees Act came in, which banned landlords from making um, unnecessary and non-permitted fees, and admin charges aren't part of that. So don't be tempted to pay anything for a viewing, for example, because that isn't what should happen. Um, you're going to have to find some money in most cases for a deposit. Most landlords will collect a deposit when you book and sign your contract. The average deposit across all the landlords is £275 per person. Now, there is some good news. If you book your property with Unipol, we don't take a deposit at all. So at this time of year, where your money might already be, your budget might already be pretty tight, we won't ask you to pay a penny towards the property. We would just ask you to sign your contract, and then we would collect your rent nearer the time when you're moving in. So deposits, that's something to bear in mind. A television license. So All BBC television, whether you watch it live or on catch up on the iPlayer, requires a TV license. So if you're going to have a television in your house, you're going to have to share a license between the household. So that's something that's worth considering. So rent, the average rent last year without bills was about 100%, £110 per week. And with bills, about £128 per week. So we think rents are likely to rise between 3 and 8% this year. So you're going to have to allow for that in your budgeting. And of course, they are averages. So I do meet a lot of students who can't afford those average prices, and we do help students to find things which fall below the average. Inflation affects everything, so it's important when you are budgeting to think about those increases because it's also going to be affecting your energy costs, your food, travel, and just general everyday products. So we recommend a safety net of maybe 3% in your budget as a recommendation so that you've got sufficient funds. So I just wanted to look at rent including bills and not including bills. Excuse me, just one moment. Thank you. So are students still in a good position to find good deals if they opt to buy their energy separately? You will find many adverts that you look at will offer rents with bills included, but not all of them will do this. So it's entirely up to you. Some students really do like to try to find the best deal possible, and they will liaise with energy companies and internet providers and get a good price. If you're somebody that just feels that they don't want the hassle of all of that, they just want to know what their rent is and they're going to budget for that throughout the year and they just know where they are, then you probably would be better off going for an all-inclusive rent. What I would say as well is that if a landlord is advertising a property without any bills included, it's probably worth still asking them either if they could do a bills package or if they could point you in the right direction of somewhere that you could get that organized, because many of them will have experience of that. So even though the bills included rents are going to allow increases for higher energy costs that we're experiencing in this country, even a rent without bills included is going to see price rises this year. And that takes into account the inflation and the increased interest rates that are on mortgages. So yeah, I think there's no escaping the overall rise in rents between this year and next. So, like I was saying before, many landlords will offer a third party to enable them to offer this all-inclusive rent to you. So, where they bundle up the bills package. So, you could talk to them about that. It might be that you sign a separate agreement between your landlord and the bills provider, and that would be explained to you. So, that's right. So, yeah, the company the landlord uses is going to charge them more. So, that's going to be reflected in the rent. We always suggest that you check the contract to see that all inclusive means what you think it means. Some landlords will include an energy or a fair usage cap in their contracts. And that's really to offer you enough energy to make sure that you're living and being able to cook and live in a house which is warm. You can, use your washing machine adequately, have good internet usage, but it also would protect them against really excessive bills for situations, I don't know, where perhaps the heating was put on its maximum heat setting for 24 hours a day, with windows open and this kind of thing. So just have a look at the fair usage policy, and to make sure that the usage contained within there is going to let you live comfortably. And if you're not sure about that, you can come to Unipol for some advice. So before signing your contract, it's important that you think about a couple of things. So is this contract offering you something which is a joint contract, so where you will have joint responsibility for that property, almost as if you were renting it with a family, like your group of friends, you're almost like one family unit. Um, or are you being offered a contract where you have individual responsibility? And that means you might be sharing a house with your friends, but your contract is individual and it just covers you for your room, and you're part of the communal areas. Um, and there's quite a distinction there in the example of if a group of six of you go to move into a house and you sign a joint contract, you are all going to be jointly responsible for the total rent payment for that whole house at the end of the month, regardless of whether two people live in there or six people live in there. So if you enter that as a group of six and the rent seems quite affordable, if one of you moves out, um, the duty would be on you to get a replacement in there. Otherwise, you would have to make up any rent shortfall. If you decide to take a property on an individual basis, if somebody else in that house decides that they're not coming anymore and they withdraw, um, that doesn't have any impact on you as a rent payer. You will continue to pay your rent because your contract is for you and you alone. So I think it's important to make that distinction. Here at Unipol, all of our contracts are individual, so we don't have you sign any joint contracts, although that does tend to be the norm across Leeds. So if you're somebody who, again, wants to have the peace of mind in knowing that they just have themselves to worry about and the contract is just about themselves, then I would recommend getting an individual contract, and Unipol can offer that. Some landlords also do offer that, but I would say joint contracts are the norm. Do make sure you can afford the rent. Um, there's no point. It's going to be really problematic for you later on if you've selected and signed for a property where you know the rent's going to be really difficult for you to pay. So do your budgeting, think about whether you can afford it, and make a sensible decision based on that realistic picture. Because there are some really expensive properties out there which would be out of most people's budgets. Always check whether a property is asking for a guarantor. Now, a guarantor is somebody who signs a legal document to say that they will pay your rent in the event of you failing to pay. So usually a guarantor is somebody like a parent or a relative who is a UK homeowner. So if you are an international student, this is something which can be quite tricky, because many international students won't have somebody like that living in this country. So there are a few ways around that. Firstly, some agencies and landlords will ask for rent payment in advance, so quite a substantial chunk, so that if you're paying your rent up front, um, you're not going to default on that, so therefore you don't need a guarantor. But a lot of students, we realise, can't afford that. Secondly, you could take out an insurance policy. They cost a couple of £100, but so an insurance company would act as a guarantor for you, and therefore that would suffice. That would satisfy that requirement of the contract. Or thirdly, you could go to find a landlord that doesn't ask for a guarantor, and you can search for those on our website. Unipol does not require a guarantor for any of its properties. So when you sign for us, you don't have to involve a parent, a guardian, a friend, a relative, anybody else to undersign your contract. So again, it makes it far less complicated. So just to recap on that with Unipol, if you do sign with Unipol, there's no deposit and there's no guarantor, and also you can have an individual contract. And do remember, once you sign your contract, it is legally binding. contracts can be quite difficult to get out of once they have been signed. So make sure you're making the right choice for you. It's always a good idea to get somebody to look over your contract, and Unipol offers a free online contract checking service. So you would go to our website, you could search contract checking, brings up a page, you fill in a form with your details, your name, email address, university, etc., and then you upload the contract that you've been sent, and then we would give it a check for you. We would come back to you if we felt that there were further questions that you should be asking, if there was anything that looked out of order in it, and yeah, we would just want to give you that peace of mind so that when you do sign, you can feel confident. So please do consider using that contract checking service because it doesn't cost anything and it could save you a big headache later on. If you do go to our website, we have this YouTube video, and it's a very short 1 minute video about signing a contract. So it highlights the legalities of it and it shows you what's involved. And yeah, I think it's just a really short but clear way of getting across the point that it is a serious um, business signing a tenancy contract. So if you go onto your laptop or your phone, or if you come into Unipol to see us to look for your look for your property for next year, you can go to from our homepage, you can search for housing and you can do a search of properties on the screen. And here there are loads of different filters that you can use to really narrow down the search that you want. So um, you could select the area that you want to live in. You can use there's a sliding scale for rent. So you could put your maximum affordable rent in there so that you don't see anything that's over that rent. You can select whether you want an apartment or if you want a big house or if you want to be no more than half a mile away from campus, all these kinds of things. Does it need a guarantor? So once you've put all of your requirements in, it should bring you up a pretty good shortlist. And then when it does bring up that shortlist, you'll find a selection of properties down the left-hand side with the rents attached. And then in the middle, you'll find a map of Leeds, and each pin will show you where a property is. So you might wish to kind of zoom out and select some pins in the area in your preferred areas, and then they will bring you up a full advert so you can see exactly what properties are on offer. So you can see here all these pins. Most of them have the thumbs up symbols, which is what you'd be looking for. And then when you see an advert, it will have all of the details. It will tell you how much the deposit is, what's included in the rent. It will tell you if it's a Unipol property or if it's a property with a different landlord. It will always say who the landlord is. So if it is a private landlord or it's a private letting agency, you would contact them directly and you would only contact Unipol if you wanted to view a Unipol owned property. You can also use our student notice board. You might find the absolute house of your dreams, but it might be that somebody in your group has dropped out and you want to find another person because you want a house of that size. There's a board here called Forming a Group to Look for Housing. So you can sign up to that for free using your email address. And again, that's from our homepage. And you can just you can create a post, you can introduce yourself, you can tell them a bit about your group or the house that you've seen and ask for people to respond to you. People can get in contact with you either through the board or it might be that you want to leave a WhatsApp number or yeah a, an Instagram handle or something like that. You too, actually, if you're looking, if you're somebody who perhaps hasn't got a group but would like to be part of a bigger group, or you might be, I've met students before who might say, oh, there are three of us, but we'd actually like to be part of a big group, like a house for of eight. You could then reply to messages, or create your own that way too. Now, if you're in the situation, and many, many students will be at this time of the year, absolutely, where you don't have a group to live with and you're not sure what to do, then please don't worry, because there are lots of people who at this stage of the year don't know what they want to do. They haven't decided if they want to be in a big house, in a small house. They haven't quite, worked out who their friendship group is. So that is something that you really don't need to worry about. Unipol will have some housemate finding events, which will be coming up over the coming months. They're usually very, very casual, sort of fun, informal events that we can invite you along to with other people who are looking to meet flatmates. Um, yeah, it's they're not really structured or awkward, or yeah, we try to make them as informal and as comfortable as possible. We also have a range of properties that you can just book an individual room in. So we have a number of city centre flats, some flats in Headingley, where you can just book an individual room. So if you think, well, I don't really mind who I live with, or I don't know who I'm going to live with, but I just want to deal with it now, you can just take a single room in a shared flat and put your name down, and then meet your housemates next year when you all move in. That's a quite a popular thing to do, and something that many students do choose to do. So yeah, there are all kinds of options. You can either be searching as a group or as an individual, and we'll probably have something for everyone. But do look out on our social media, because if we are hosting an event, we'll put it on our Instagram. So, in terms of me saying about not rushing or feel confident about who you want to live with, you might just be interested to know that last year we did a survey of over 820 students. Well, over 820 students responded, um, and more than one in four of those students had either changed or wanted to change the groups with the people they initially signed contracts with. So, more than 25% of students were saying they regretted the choice that they'd made earlier in the year. So this is why I say, don't feel the pressure. If if you don't feel that it's right deep down, then don't sign up with a group. Even if you think it's a bit awkward and you don't want to offend anybody, it's better having that conversation now than dreading moving in with a group later on, or even worse, not even really being in contact with a group and then having to live with them later on. So really, I really would want you to feel confident in your choice. And if you're not confident, I would suggest waiting, a bit longer, because there will always be rooms. Um, we've had rooms available across the city right across the summer. So, you could have the pick of all of the houses available, all of the houses in October, but there are still houses going to be available later on as well. And making the wrong decision causes a lot of stress for everybody, and that's the last thing we would want. So use any events that we put on as an opportunity to widen your circle of friends, meet other people, and increase, different options you have for sharing when you start house hunting. Just a quick word about scams. Now, scams aren't something that come up very often, but I have dealt with a few cases over the last few years, and it's been really devastating for the students who've been affected. So I just wanted to say a few words. It's definitely not the norm, and it's definitely not something that happens all the time to lots of students, but I just want you to be alert. So never pay any money to view a property. No landlord should be taking money off anybody for viewings. If you come across a landlord who is always making up excuses as to why they're not available, or why you can't view a house at a particular time, be a bit suspicious about that. Anybody who's wanting to let you a property should be able to show you it first. Look out for third-party websites that maybe are trying to sell you fictional accommodation. Um, I've been in a situation where I've Googled an address, I've looked it up, and it's not student accommodation at all. You can tell by the building that it's definitely not going to be a student property. So it's a good idea to cross-check that. If you're ever unsure, ask Unipol for advice. That would be my tip. So we know a lot of students are looking for their accommodation around now for next year. That doesn't mean you have to, but it's a good idea to get this information and be, well equipped so that you can make a good choice. But we know you are looking, so we want you to look and yeah, have a good start to the process. Always think about whether the property is right for you. It's no good if you love the house, but it's in the wrong location, or it's going to take you too long to get in, or it you don't feel like it's a safe area, or whatever. So do think carefully about that. You know, Try to get consensus of the group, because if somebody in the group isn't happy, um, that's an issue which could bubble on, which could endure for a while if there are some people who don't like the property. So do try to get that consensus. Because as I was saying before, if you do sign and you sign in error, and you have regret about it, it's unlikely that a landlord's going to release you once you've signed without really good reason. And yeah, so just don't do it. Oh, and another point to note, whatever you do, please don't sign two contracts. We've had this situation before where some students have signed a contract, but they didn't appreciate that they were legally bound by it, and then they saw a better house and signed for that contract. Um, and legally speaking, you would be liable for both rents if you sign two contracts. So please do not sign two contracts. You would have to be released from one before signing another. Yeah, I think I've said that. Always consider your priorities. I think before you start looking, have a good think about what your priorities are, in terms of location, type of house, distance, amenities, bathrooms, all these kinds of things. Um, and also think about what you'd be willing to forego if you can't have everything. It's quite rare that you're going to find a property that ticks every box on your wish list. So think about what you'd be prepared to be flexible over. Budget has never been more important. Money's really, really tight. So, do think about your budget. Um, and either rent a Unipol property or a Unipol code accredited property, because either way, you're going to have that peace of mind that if anything goes wrong, Unipol will be here to help. Always ask the right questions at viewings. Don't be frightened to ask questions. Um, Check on Rate Your Landlord a property to make sure if you think it looks quite good. See if other people think so, and if you think not so good, see what other people think. Anything which is agreed by somebody viewing the property or a landlord, make sure you get it in writing. So if you're on a viewing, that landlord's going to be really keen for you to sign up to that. And they might promise all kinds of things. They might say things like, oh, I'll get some new garden furniture next year to make the garden a bit nicer. Or, oh, yeah, that sofa is a bit tatty. I'll make sure I'll put a new sofa in there. If they promise those things, oh, I'm going to decorate the house throughout for next year, it's all going to be brand new painted. Make sure you get that in writing. It can just be an email, but you want them to confirm that that's what they have agreed to do. Because if you don't have that in writing and you move in and the garden furniture hasn't materialized, the sofa's still tatty, the walls haven't been painted, you haven't really got anywhere to go because you haven't got that confirmation from the landlord. So do get it put in writing. And as I've said before, do get your tenancy agreement checked before you sign. And you could look at our house hunting guide. It's packed full of information about the areas, different features of houses to look out for, um, different rent prices in different areas, information about different all kinds of things. So please have a look at that. Um, and then another thing that Unipol is offering this year is that if you sign up to our mailing list for the student houses which are being released on the 19th of October, if you sign up to that mailing list, we will give you a link to access that list one day earlier on Friday, the 18th of October. So if you've been through our website to look at our properties already and you know the ones you like, and you want to book viewings for them, um, you'll have access to them potentially a day before on the 18th of October. So do sign up to our mailing list. And thank you very much for listening. Um, you can always email us here at head office, info@unipol.org.uk, and we will get back to you. Do complete the survey for your chance to win £200 in cash. And if you need us to help you, we certainly can do that too. You can call in and see us, or you can, give us a call and let us know what you're trying to find, and we'll try and put you on the right track.